These are the metaphysical teachings of the L. Swan.
So one of my goals is to sort of change the perception of what spirituality is, because that word, it just kind of has this mystical connotation, like it's about something not quite real, when in fact spirituality is real life. That's what spirituality truly is just true, real, deep life, life that is connected to the source of things, life that is, lived from an authentic place, beneath just the appearances. Whatever's truly real, whatever's truly authentic. It's life. Spirituality is life. And spiritual awakening and discussion is really about real life. And, how do we really live? And that applies to everything. It applies to our individual experience. It applies to society, culture, human history, whatever life might exist beyond this world, in the universe and space. It just applies to everything. It applies to science and physics, because science is about the appearance of things, but when we get deep enough, it connects to life, to what life is in its essence. I mean, that's the question. What is life in its essence? What are we in our essence? And the problem with spirituality is kind of the problem with humanity in general and human perception of reality. It's that it just doesn't go deep enough. It is on the surface, and individually we're caught in our ego. So even when we are well-meaning, we look at things from this defensive, shallow ego perspective, and we get caught up in ego views. When we are caught up in ego views, all of the qualities of ego really just blind us to reality as it is, to real life. Again, no matter how well-meaning we may be, if we are caught in ego, we look down on others. We use the failings of others, the problems that are apparent, that are visible in others, to condemn others and to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. And we are unable to actually work for a better world, a better humanity from a place of authenticity within ourselves. If we're authentic, we will understand that we are incredibly imperfect beings. And that's the place where we're at in our evolution, in our development. We should not try to be perfect. If we're trying to be these, good people, these socially, really just socially perfected, people who can say, what's right and wrong for everyone and how we should all behave. If we're trying to sort of like socially engineer things to be what we, what fits our comforts, because we think we're so good that we can do that, then, that's a problem waiting to happen. We have to accept our own lesser nature. It's not a condemnation of ourselves to do this. It's just a way to ensure that ego isn't in the front seat. So we have to accept our lesser nature. We have to understand that we are ego and soul, that we have this blind mind, this lesser, unconscious, ignorant little, instinctual survival mind, that if we don't admit it's there, it's gonna wrest control from us. It's going to take the front seat, and it's going to cause a whole lot of problems. But that's what's happening. It's a simple concept to just, you can understand it in terms of psychology. You can understand it just in a much more simple way in terms of, Zen Buddhism. Just the idea of ego as just the little monkey mind, the little noisy reactive mind, whatever you want to label it, or however you want to analyze it. It's just you have to be aware that you have that lesser mind, because when we're not aware, that's when it jumps out on us. I always, one of my analogies is that that lesser mind is kind of like a pet wolf that can serve you, that can be a companion and help you out. If you're aware that it's there and it's at your side, and sometimes it has to be leashed. But if you don't admit you have a wolf that's a part of you, then it might just attack and destroy someone, or it might jump on you from behind and attack and destroy you. That's a bit dramatic, but in a sense the ego is like that. It has the capacity to be a little monster. It has the capacity to turn into this cold-hearted, destructive thing if we let it be in control, if we blind ourselves to our own deeper nature and to our heart. That's another really important point, is that knowledge, spiritual knowledge, isn't just about understanding in mind. We can meditate, we can master our mind, but we have to be in touch with our heart as well, our love, our true, essential love. That's kind of the nature of the soul. We have to be in touch with the love that's in our deepest soul, our deepest spirit, our what we call the heart. Because knowledge can be cold. Spirituality can be sort of an elitist type of thing. If our spirituality is just about having, a better self, a better soul, we're just thinking of, I want it all for myself. And we're putting that in a spiritual context of, I want to master my mind, I want to be free, I want to be, enlightened, or at least awakened, and, make it out of this human ignorance. I. It's not like that's evil or can't be a part of our desire, because we should desire to be free. We should desire to master the lesser mind. But if it's just that, and there isn't a compassion and a love and an awareness of the equality of others and the relationship that is core to life, the geometry of existence that I talk about, which is a geometry of relationship, how we are all in relationship to that which is other than ourselves, and we have to be aware of the realness of what's other than ourselves, and to be in that equal and conscious relationship. If we don't have that, if we don't have that compassion and empathy and love, and I'm not talking about a surface thing, if it's not easy for us to care about others, that's different. I'm saying it's a deep heart thing, where we have a heart love for other beings, for all other beings. We can be grumpy people, we don't have to like people in a social surface sense. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that real spirituality is defined by a deep love of other beings, of all beings, and a desire that all should be saved, that all should be whole, that all should be healed. And so the ego mind, when it is embarking on a spiritual journey under its own, guises, basically it's doing the thing it wants in the name of spirituality. It's incapable of that deeper love. It has affection for whatever it desires, or whatever it's comfortable with, or has a natural bond with. So ego-driven people will be close to their family or friends. They will be able to exhibit this shallow form of love, which is really sort of like human affection. But that's an easier thing for those we care about. If you're in a relationship with someone you are with and want to be with and like and are attracted to, it's not hard to love them, at least at first. Once things get difficult, that's when marriages fall apart and friends become enemies, because it's not very deep. But the ego is able to do that to a degree, especially with those it wants and needs. It's harder to do that with people that we don't have a personal human connection with. That's where the soul comes in. That's where spiritual love comes in. And that's the answer to the problems that we see in our world. It's not knowledge alone. I mean, knowledge is good, but it's not knowledge alone. There definitely has to be love there too. Love and compassion and consciousness, they give us this perspective we can't have without them. When you look deep into yourself, you understand the things in you that are not perfect, and more than not perfect, that are destructive. The potential for destruction is there. We'd be a very lucky person if we lived without, as a human being, without having the potential for destruction within us. We'd be a very fortunate person. And yet, even these rare, fortunate people, you cannot judge those who have the potential for destruction, or even in an ultimate sense, you couldn't judge those who have actually done bad things and been destructive. Because, in a moral sense, if we are naturally good, then we haven't had this moral struggle and made these moral decisions not to follow these evil desires. It's the person who has wrestled with their destructive elements and brought it into this holistic consciousness that prevents them from harming others that is actually good in a more moral sense. But, I mean, neither one is superior, it's just we're all different. But there's no place for this ultimate judgment. There's a place, as I like to say, for discernment. We have to discern what's harmful, we have to discern what's aware and what's ignorant. But there's not a place for this this condemnation and judgment in a more existential sense. If we're going to move forward to the next stage of consciousness, if humanity is going to evolve and survive its, where it's at, its growing pains, we have to just become more aware, and we have to understand the qualities of ego and the qualities of soul, and we have to stop working for what we think is good from a place of ego, with the qualities of ego, control and hatred and these things driving us. My spirituality, which I see as real life, is not, I believe it's not an elitist thing. It's not a thing that's about some exceptional knowledge. Now, there are truths that are more available to those who are in a certain place of consciousness. But the basic truth of our soul is available to anyone, wherever they are at. I like to say that truth makes sense. It's not complicated. My geometry of life thing might sound complicated on the surface, but it's not. It just means that each of us, in our essence and as a human being, we experience life through relating outward from ourselves, relating outward. We could be an isolated entity, but we are not really, in terms of the experience of life. We're not really isolated entities. We're relating outward. We're connecting with whatever is around us, whoever is around us. It's a simple thing. Relationship gives us life. Even in terms of physical nature and physics, if we are climbing a tree, we reach up and we grab a branch and we pull ourselves up. That is relationship right there. It's relationship of physical form and forces, deeper forces of physics that make up physical form. It's relationship. And then when it comes to love, when it comes to connection, when it comes to friendship, when it comes to creative collaboration, it's relationship. That's not a complex concept. Now, I believe the idea of that geometry of life does extend toward the deepest metaphysical understanding of reality. But It's not a complex concept, and there is an altruistic aspect to this, even though it's both. It's just awareness and love, without a selfish aspect where we just want what's best for others because we get that they are real, we get that they're just as real as us, even if we might not experience them directly in the way that we experience us. So there is that unselfish part of it, just love, but then there is a selfish part of it in a positive sense, that we know that this is the door to life. This is the door to life. Relationship is the door to life. Connection is the door to life. Authenticity is the door to life. Not to be trapped in ego or whatever traps there are in terms of, consciousness and metaphysics, trapped in hatred and harming others, because those things trap us, but to be in real, authentic, loving relation to the rest of existence. That's the goal. That's freedom. That's life. When we harm others, even if we don't feel the hurt at the time, we are scarring ourselves in a way that we will have to experience that at some point. That's the metaphysical truth, and that's the metaphysical truth of what real hell is that we are an entity surrounded by scars, by hurt that we have caused and created, that remains there and separates us from existence until we go through hell, until we awaken, until we see it for what it is, see what we have done, repent from our hearts, that kind of thing. That's an existential reality which is physical in, the deeper sense of physics going into consciousness going into metaphysics and spirituality. We bind ourselves in darkness and pain when we harm others, even if we don't feel it in the moment. But we can glimpse this, and so again, that positive selfishness of just awareness. It's like if someone, is a, say, surfer, and that's a good analogy because there's the ocean behind me. But if someone's a surfer and they know how the tides go and the waves go, and there's cliffs over here, they're going to avoid getting smashed and cut up on the rocks because they're going to know. Their awareness is going to guide them. And it's the same way in metaphysics. Awareness allows us as souls to, be free to surf the waves of reality without getting, smashed into rocks and trapped in a tiny cave in the cold, shivering and bleeding. That'd be horrible as a human being. And there's spiritual, things which match that. In spiritual reality, when we cut ourselves off from what's authentic, what's true, what's life, what's love. So spirituality is life. In this human world, the life that we desire, the life that we experience, it is a reflection of something deeper. And this world, this life, as I like to say, it's real. It's not an illusion. It's just a small part of something more. But it is real, and it does reflect life. It does reflect something deeper. And if we really want life, and if we have some awareness, we're going to experience this world and enjoy this world, but not in a way that cuts us off from the greater thing, the deeper thing, the more lasting thing. It's like that classic story of the goose with the golden egg, where the person has a goose that lays golden eggs, and they have to just accept that it lays certain eggs here and there. But in time they'll gain great wealth, but they want it all now, so they kill the goose and lose the wealth. When we focus just on this world and we want all life experience here and now, we end up actually hurting our connection to life. Because if we try to get everything, infinite desires out of this finite world, we're going to end up fucking shit up. We are. Because that's the ego, and that ego is a little black hole that cannot be filled, because this world alone cannot fill the infinite desires of soul. The ego feels this desire, but it doesn't understand things. It doesn't understand that this desire, its desire actually segues into something much deeper, which is the desires of soul. And so it blindly seeks to fill, in what is essentially infinite desire. in a finite place, in a finite experience. And it can't be done. Now again, this world is real, this world is beautiful. I like to say how authentic spirituality actually makes this life experience better. It makes us more present, it makes us more powerful, it makes our intimacies and our friendships more powerful, more intimate. Real spirituality isn't about diminishing this life, it's about saying there's just so much more. You know, false spirituality is about saying how this life is nothing, or this life is illusion, or this life is bad. You know, this life is sinful, whatever it might be, and it's all about what comes after. It's like heaven or nirvana or something else. That's not the reality of things. This life is beautiful, but it's a small part of something else. It's like foam on a deep sea, and to feel that something else is important, and it makes this life better. We are more present, we are more at peace, and we actually enjoy it more. So that's true spirituality. So there is no reason when we are conscious to harm our connection to our soul and our soul's connection to the infinite, to the deeper thing, for some finite and passing experience in this world. It's the same when we are trying to do good. We end up fucking shit up because we are trying to do too much because we're not connected to something deeper and something more. If we are not connected to something deeper and something more, we're so desperate to make this world perfect. We take our little cause and we get so angry and we get so upset. We don't just try to, people talk about justice and they talk about helping, but a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people aren't really looking for just, some justice or like lifting what's most harmful and what's most painful. They're taking whatever they like and what they want to, they're trying to make it perfect. They're trying to make it complete. They're trying to say it has to be all the way. They ignore a bunch of other shit and they say their little thing has to be all the way. That's a problem. It's a problem with most activism. Of course you can't do everything and everyone has their cause, but you have to understand that connectivity, and you have to understand that you're not going to get perfection in this one little area while everything else is imperfect. It's not a perfect world. And so we have to work for change from a place of awareness and realism. Being realistic does not mean being cynical. It doesn't mean that we don't have a vision of something truly transcendent. Actually, that vision of something truly transcendent allows us to work with peace because we understand it's connected to a much broader thing. It's not just about just this world. But then, knowing that, we can do what we can to make this world a better place. It's always about that perspective and that connectivity to soul and the perspective of soul. To understanding that this world is important, that this world is real, that our human experience is real and important, but that it's part of something so much more. We have to be in touch with our souls. That's what brings us to real life. If we are not in touch with our souls, how will we have real life? I ask you that. How will we have real life? You can doubt that there is a soul, but I tell you there is a soul, and if I am right, then each of us should seek that soul. If I am right, then we live in eternity, and there's no way out. That's not a bad thing, that's a beautiful thing. We exist in eternity. But if we're avoiding reality, if we're harming our surroundings and the relationship to existence, then we could be in trouble. If you knew that, if you knew there was a soul and you knew that you existed eternally, like some grand, amazing game beyond comprehension, wouldn't you seek to know the rules, to know the patterns of that reality? It's okay to doubt. I believe that honest doubt is a hallmark of true spirituality, of awakening and seeking. But there's a difference between doubting as we examine something with an open mind and a shallow form of doubt that simply dismisses what we don't want to be true because we want to be in control, because we want to be focused on our ego appetites and desires and needs and wants and identity. I think it's worth considering that our conscious experience is real, and that the soul is real, and that we are in this grand adventure of existence that this human life is a small part of. And it's worth considering that it would be good to get in touch with what is most real within ourselves. In the end, I guess that's one of the core points I would want to make is, isn't it worth considering that we might have a soul? You know, there's that, I'm not going to pronounce the name right, I don't think, but there's that old, I think it was Pascal's wager, Pascal's wager, and this was a Christian back in the old days, to be technical, and he made this wager about, you know, the importance of salvation, and he said, you know, if you know, choose God, then the reward is potentially infinite and eternal. And if you're wrong, the loss is brief and finite. So if God is real and you choose God, then your reward is eternal. And if you don't choose God, then, you know, you're lost. So it's worth choosing God even if you can't know for sure if God is real. Now, that's a Christian perspective, and because there are many religions and many spiritual views, it doesn't work. Because you could say, okay, I want to choose God, or I want to choose what's real. I want to choose, you know, soul. But there's many different possible paths. So that wager doesn't work. I don't hold by it. It does work if you open it up to something more metaphysical and say, if there's a chance that our consciousness is something essential, a soul, that we have an eternal aspect of ourselves that, if we seek it and get in touch with it and identify with it, can carry us into some eternal and infinite life experience. It doesn't have to do with any religion. But if there's a chance that we have a soul, I think it's worth the bet. I think it's worth betting on that chance and seeking it. Now, it's not a bet with me anymore, but I think it's worth a bet for those who might not know. There's many paths, and as I like to say, that, you know, as many people have said, the paths are varied and very individual. It can look like anything. You don't have to follow some religion. You can follow some religion. What's important is that authentic desire to know, which will carry you forward and keep you seeking and keep you examining and being authentic, just being real. You know, that's another thing I like to say is it's about just getting real. You know, like the saying, get real. Get real, man. You know, get real, motherfucker. It's that's what spirituality is about. It's about getting real. If it's not real, it's nothing. If it's not real, it's nothing. I say this a lot. You know, it doesn't matter what we might believe or what others might perceive of us. The only thing that matters is what's truly real. And I think that's one of the things with awakening is when you get that one truth, that single truth, you just get that, you really get that, oh wow, it doesn't matter what people think I know. It doesn't matter what I appear to know or appear to be. All that matters is what's real. That's all that matters. Man, I want that. And I want to really sort of think about what's really real, you know. That can lead us forward. But yeah, so those are some things about what I think true spirituality is. It's about real life. It's about getting real. It's about, you know, a soul identity, which is not just some idea, but an experience that we can come to as we seek our true self. Knowledge begins with self. As we seek our true self and then move forward from there in authentic relationship to the rest of life.